Will the Cleveland Browns actually keep 4 quarterbacks next season? I doubt it, and I'll tell you why. Coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. It's a Fan Friday. I do have a topic from Blue Sky that I will get to coming up here in the show. But first, we've talked so much about the Browns quarterback situation. We haven't talked about as much, though, the possibility that they actually keep all 4 of these quarterbacks on the roster. We'll go there. Also, are the Browns destined to be one of the 2 worst teams in football? And what I'm watching for at rookie minicamp over the weekend. I do want to thank you for being every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, with bonus content on some weekends as well. And it's totally free to you. Just hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. And of course, at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. You can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comment section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends with the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. And I want to know if there is a world that exists where the Browns actually decide to keep all 4 of these quarterbacks. It popped in my brain that we've spent so much time trying to guess or predict who's going to be here, who's not going to be here, who's the odd man out. And maybe they consider not moving on from anybody and they keep all 4. Is there a world where that happens? Is there a reality where that happens? Probably. But is it this one? Probably not. So listen, there's something to be said for being in a year at that position specifically, where you have an open competition and you don't necessarily have a clear-cut number 1, and everyone's going to have to sort of fight to earn the job, and you haven't ruled anything out in terms of who's actually going to start for the job. So I can wrap my head around the fact that it's an open competition and you're trying to weigh all your options. And so in doing that, and in a year where also because you don't have a clear-cut favorite, and because maybe you're still looking for that franchise quarterback next year, sure, I can wrap my head around the idea that, like, hey, let's just keep 4 quarterbacks, have a bunch of depth here, let's try a bunch of different things. They won't use the word rebuild, but with the way, obviously, we heard Jimmy Haslam speak at the owners' meetings, it sounds like they understand they're in a bit of a rebuild here. And so in that vein, understanding that that's the case, it does feel like they're accepting their fate. And when you're in a rebuild, like, yeah, nothing's necessarily a bad idea. Like, you try a bunch of different things, especially when it comes to the quarterback position. So in that regard, and from a financial standpoint, because the financial implications of all these contracts, and none of them are so out of this world that you can't, like, move on from one guy or whatever and feel like it's the end of the world. Like, if they moved on from Flacco, for example, no one's the wiser. They move on from Kenny Pickett, financial commitments wise, nothing really to see here. Like, none of these are going to be financial burdens for the Browns if they were to move on, because, like that just the nature of the contracts right now. It's a bunch of later, mid to later round rookie deals and veterans who are sort of trying to earn their stripes and figure out, where they're at. Kenny Pickett's still on his rookie deal, but it's, he's making the most of anybody in terms of just like straight up money. But, they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. So it's not like he's locked in next year with some guarantees or anything. So it's a situation that allows the Browns to, throw darts at a board and try it. And so on that front, it's better to have more options than less. And I can understand that. But that's what the offseason is for, is carrying 4 guys and sort of sorting through those things and figuring out who stays and who goes. And listen, the last couple of years, the quarterback rooms have been so plagued by injuries that having 4 isn't like, I can understand where it's like, hey, we might as well have more options than less, right? And listen, in an ideal world, if the Browns could move somebody like Shedeur Sanders to the practice squad, maybe they would without somebody plucking him. But there's no guarantee that that's going to happen, that somebody wouldn't take him. So I don't think they want to do that. I think they primarily want to keep these 2 rookies and then see, which of the veterans maybe garners the most in a potential trade at some point leading into the season, and then flip them for a pick. That's kind of my read on the situation right now. And that could obviously change. And a lot of this too comes down to how the rookies perform. If Dylan Gabriel looks incredible, maybe he makes it even easier to expend one of those veteran guys. If Dylan Gabriel looks terrible, maybe they can put him on the practice squad and they only have to roster the other 3. But the idea that they would keep all 4 doesn't feel like it's really something that's viable for this organization or many organizations. There was a time where teams kept really just 2 quarterbacks on the roster. At least there was a trend of that, I want to say maybe like 7-8 years ago, where teams would sort of just be like, you know what? Maybe even a little further back than that, like maybe 10 years ago, where teams would keep just 2 guys and sort of ride with it and see what happens. And some teams, I think, still sometimes do that, because as valuable as that position is, like if you have a guy at the top of the group, you're not as it's kind of one of those things where it's like, listen, we have a franchise quarterback, not the Browns, but I'm saying in general. If you have a franchise quarterback and he goes down with an injury, yeah, you probably want like a solid backup that can keep you afloat. But if you're going to your 3rd string quarterback anyway, I think most teams kind of understand like, hey, we're at this point, you're taking a shot in the dark. Like you're just kind of hoping something works if you're going to your 3rd string guy. And so I think there was a thought process there of like, well, let's just keep 2 and not worry about holding a 3rd or a 4th because, we want to use those roster spots elsewhere. The rosters are limited. And I think teams sort of have pivoted back to keeping 3 now more often than not. But, I think 4 is just a bridge too far. I don't think a team is going to do that. Even this Cleveland Browns team that doesn't have like a set in stone quarterback at this point. Building a roster is a puzzle. And if you keep 4 quarterbacks, that's 1 less player that you can keep somewhere else. And so I think it's easy to sit here and look at this room right now and say, oh, they could keep all 4 because just of the nature of the situation. You got the 2 rookies that you're hopeful for, and you don't want to part ways with them because you want to see what they bring to the table. You need to give them time to grow and develop, just not just this year, but beyond. And then you got the 2 veterans who you kind of hope someone emerges to sort of hold that class down or hold the group down and be sort of the frontline guy, at least on a temporary basis, or like a bridge guy. So you're like, I understand where, this room is, it has reasons why you could keep 4, but I just think if you cut, it's easy to just look at the quarterback class, like in a microscope, or the quarterback room in a microscope, I should say. I keep using the word class. But you have to think about all the other positions on this roster. You have to think about the fact that as much as there's been injuries to quarterbacks, there's also been injuries to offensive linemen. And this offensive line, a lot of veterans on it, guys who are returning this year, they're not getting younger. Like there could be more injuries. Jack Conklin hasn't really been able to stay healthy the last couple of years. Like, is he going to be able to stay healthy this season and finish through? He once he was back last year, he finished the season, but can you do that for another season? And what's a contract year for him? Joe Bitonio is up there in age, obviously, from a football standpoint. He could be retiring at the end of the season. Like, is his body going to hold up? You have DeJuan Jones who gets hurt a lot. Like, linemen is the offensive line is one of those position groups that you prioritize keeping a handful of guys. Same thing with defensive line, especially in Jim Schwartz's system, where they send waves or rotations of guys. They don't just have like their set in stone players that are always going to be out there. Secondary is another group where you'd like to have some depth and have a number of guys sort of backloading the roster. And that goes for especially like the safety position. You don't have Juan Thornhill anymore. Who's going to be the primary backup to a guy? Probably, I'm assuming Ronnie Hickman starts at free safety. Who's going to be his backup? Who's going to be down the depth chart at that position? So there's a number of spots you have to think about here. They might keep 4 running backs again if they like Pierre Strong as a return option on this team. So I just think when the maths, like, you're going to end up getting to a point where it's like they can't afford to keep 4 quarterbacks, even though they're in this kind of this rebuilding situation. They're in a situation where their team in general is in flux and they're sort of thinking about the future. And, they're just trying to kind of make it through a year, be as competitive as possible and have, spitball some things and try some things. I don't think it's going to be feasible when it's all said and done for the Browns to actually retain all 4 of these quarterbacks on the active roster. But I like the thought process behind thinking about this now, and the next few months will be telling. Because like I said, if one of those rookies emerges and he ends up being fantastic, it makes it even easier to swallow if you have to trade a Flacco or trade a Pickett or whatever it might be that this team could potentially explore. Are the Browns destined to finish, as we talk about rebuilds, as one of the bottom 2 teams in football? I've got a few teams that I think are actually in a worse spot than the Browns. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25, Call of Duty, and much, much more, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. Here's the other thing. Do you ever find yourself just flipping between apps to find one place that just works? With Fire TV Stick 4K, everything's in one place, from Netflix to YouTube and beyond. We are a Fire TV Stick family in my house. We have one on every TV in our home. It makes streaming our favorite TV shows and movies easier than ever. Now that I know that you can also turn the device into an Xbox, I may just give that a try as well. Head over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible control required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Stick Cube. All right, so this was actually posed to me on Blue Sky by a listener, which I appreciated on a Fan Friday, the contribution from somebody who sort of brought this up. But what I found interesting about it, and what's really what I found kind of ironic about it, was the topic was something that actually came up on our most recent squad show, which dropped on Thursday, our NFL squad show that we do. And I thought it was interesting that we got to do, this was our last squad show until really leading up to the regular season next year. And so they asked us to do a power ranking of all 32 teams. You can guess who the top teams were. It was like the Eagles, it was the Chiefs, it was the Bills, it was the Ravens. There might have been one maybe surprising team in there, but I forget off the top of my head who it was. But it was your standard operating procedure in terms of the top teams. And the bottom teams, I think, was still sort of standard operating procedure because you had the Browns near the bottom of the list. Go figure. You had the Saints near the bottom of the list, which also makes some sense given their current situation. I'll actually read you here what the bottom 5 teams were. It was Browns 32, Jets 31, Saints 30, Panthers 29, Titans 28. That was your bottom 5 teams in the power rankings for Locked On, which again, go check out the full show to find out where other teams kind of fit into the picture here. But what I found interesting was the Browns were voted last. And I was asked on Blue Sky, as I put out, as I tend to do, anything you want me to talk about on Friday's show, somebody asked, are we likely to finish 31-32 as everyone expects? And what I think is interesting about this question is like, listen, I tried to defend the Browns' honor on the squad show. Not that they need necessarily defending, but I listen, I am not having some like vision, like I'm not having some like visions of grandeur here where it's like, I think the Browns are going to come out and surprise everybody visions of grandeur, excuse me. I'm not sitting here expecting the Browns to make the playoffs or be like some Super Bowl contending team. Like I would never insinuate that ever. They're just not there. We know where the state of this team is. I've just talked about the last segment, them being in rebuild mode. I would never do that. But I also, as bad as people think they're going to be, and the Vegas total last I looked was 5.5 wins. As bad as people think they're going to be, I actually think there's a couple teams that are in worse spots than Cleveland is from just like an overall talent standpoint. And talent only gets you so far. Like that's 100% true. Because at the end of the day, we've said the Browns roster, like we thought the Browns roster last year was uber talented, and look what it manifested. It was a 3-win season. But when I think about teams that are in like the worst spots, I always think about the quarterback situation. And obviously the Browns are in that boat. As we just laid out, they have 4 quarterbacks, a lot of unknowns, aging veteran, a guy that is a flailing first-round pick in this league. Like, it's not that they have this loaded quarterback room. But I also think about, well, I'll get to that in a second. But as I think about, like, what teams could be worse than the Browns, the first thought I have is always to look at teams' quarterback situations. And I think there's at least two teams with worse quarterback situations. I think you can make the case for a third as well. But the first team that came to mind, and the team that I actually voted to finish when we did our power rankings, finish last, was the New Orleans Saints. They are a team very much in flux, very much in rebuild. Their quarterback situation is a disaster because Derek Carr is going to be lost for the season. And so they're going to the next year with Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, and Jay Kaner is the quarterback situation. The quarterback situation can tell you so much about the projection of a team. And I just don't know, as I look at the rest of this lost roster, like how I feel about what they're going to bring to the table. They got Kelvin Banks Jr., left tackle. Is he adding wins to this team's total? No. I mean, like, I love Chris Olave there. He's fantastic. You got a couple good skill players because you also have Alvin Kamara there. And I really like Alvin Kamara. Like, they have some players, they have some playmakers. But I look at this roster and I don't see anybody that stands out. And I'm like, you know what? I know, like, Chase Young is a pretty solid player at this point in his career still. Cameron Jordan, excuse me. He's obviously a solid player still as a veteran who's coming back for at least one more year. And so, like, it's not lost on me that they have a few pieces, but are they like uber talented? No. And their quarterback room, to me, that's a worse quarterback room than the Browns, because at least with the Browns, like, you have somebody in Flacco that you've seen do it and help this team win games. And if he can give you some semblance of that, you feel like you can win some football games next year with him under center if he's the guy that sticks. So there's that team. There's also the New York Jets, who, listen, this is no disrespect to Justin Fields, because I like Justin Fields and I had high hopes for him at the NFL level. I do think there's limitations, though, to what he does as a quarterback, a starting quarterback, in running an offense. So, I don't know also in like having a defensive-minded head coach in Aaron Glenn is going to help his cause either. Now, the thing with the Jets is that they have a really talented roster in general. Like, they were built to supposedly be, a playoff contending team last year, and then it all fell apart with Aaron Rodgers. But, like, you're talking about, they have Garrett Wilson, who's a staple player for them. They have Breece Hall as a skill position running back that they really like there. Their offensive line, I think they've worked to sort of improve in recent years. Obviously, we know about on the defensive side of the ball and having one of the who's considered one of the best cornerbacks in the game in Sauce Gardner. Like, they have talent, and their defensive line is really good with Quentin Williams, Jermaine Johnson, Quincy Williams. Like, they have a solid defensive team already, and part of the reason why Aaron Glenn I think Aaron Glenn's going to make them even better. So the Jets have talent versus the Saints, who don't. So their quarterback situation, though, gives me pause into thinking like they're going to be amazing this year. I think if I had to rank them, I would put the Jets probably slightly ahead of the Browns just from roster construction, but there's still some questions there, and I do still trust Justin Fields probably a little bit more than I trust the Browns quarterbacks right now. And then the other team that I think is being maybe overranked in both this sort of locked on version of power rankings, but also probably elsewhere, is the Indianapolis Colts. I'm sorry. I cannot take a quarterback room seriously that consists of Anthony Richardson, who I think at this point we're starting to find out just isn't the guy, and isn't going to turn into the immense talent that he was drafted to be. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my read on the situation. And then Daniel Jones, like, that's your quarterback room. I'm not necessarily jumping for joy about that. I'm not feeling like the warm and fuzzies about. They did draft Riley Leonard this year. It's kind of like another rookie fun thing. But I look up and down the Colts roster and I'm like, where is the amazing talent on this? Like, they have some players that stand out. Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman is a decent wide receiver duo. Their defense has some players, but I'm not sitting here blown away by the Indianapolis Colts, and given their quarterback situation, I don't take them seriously. So I picked the Colts and the Saints to finish worse than the Browns. But I understand where, even in the locked on power rankings, why the Browns are an easy target. They're the Cleveland Browns. They have this negative connotation with them for always sucking. And so people are going to pick them to generally be bad. I get it. And again, this isn't me trying to boast about the Browns being some playoff contender. I would never do that. I know where they're at in their current situation. But when I think about this Browns team and the ability to be competitive next year versus some of these other teams that I just rattled off, like, do I think they're going to finish in the bottom two? They definitely could. They 100% could. Their floor is that low. but I also think their ceiling is higher than some of these other teams that we laid out from the simple fact that defense last year was not that bad. They were hindered by the fact that the offense couldn't stay on the field, couldn't put up any points, but they tried their damnedest to keep other teams off the scoreboard, and oftentimes did, and they kept the Browns in games longer than they probably should have at times last year. This defense could go out tomorrow and I think give you pretty solid efforts in most games that they're going to play on the schedule next year and keep you at least close. The biggest hindrance last year was quarterback play, and if you at least get steady quarterback play this year from somebody, one of those four guys, I think there's a really good chance that they, exceed the win total that they're projected to have in Vegas of 5.5. I'm not saying by a lot, but like maybe they get to 6, 7, 8 wins. And I think that'd be pretty, respectable given the state of the team right now. So I don't know. Maybe I'm seeing everything through orange and brown glasses right now, but I think about like the worst teams in football right now. And I don't think the Browns are as bad as some people seem to be projecting them. I think there's a few teams that are worse than them and worse off than them right now. But again, that's why you got to play the games, and we'll see how it all sort of shakes itself out in the months ahead. And obviously when the season gets here. Rookie minicamp is here. What I'll be watching for over the weekend in Berea. We talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock strikes 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner who works as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn Jobs clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post Your Job is LinkedIn's new feature that can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so we have rookie minicamp this weekend. And obviously that means that there's going to be some things to keep our eyes on here as these players take the field in Berea for the very first time as members of the Cleveland Browns. Now, it's important to remember, rookie minicamp isn't like heavy on-field teamwork where they're like going out and running like offensive plays and going like 11 on 11 or they're not doing that stuff. They save that more so for like veteran mini camp and then obviously training camp. Like that stuff is to come, but it's not happening. It's not happening during rookie mini camp. Rookie mini camp is a lot more individual drills sort of within your position group and, working on certain things, shaking the rust off, doing actual football work rather than all the training that goes into these players getting ready for the pre-draft process. Which, by the way, I've always said I think the pre-draft process, like the spillover from you go from playing college games to training for the draft to then like it's so hot and heavy and it happens so quickly. You wonder why like sometimes rookies fall off at the end of their rookie year at times because they're training for like over a year straight and I know like you're always working, but it's like a different type of thing when it's just constantly working out. Now we got to train for the draft, train. Now we got to get ready for the season, start that. So it's just a lot, but I digress on that. That's a topic for another time. So in terms of what I'm looking for from, again, a setting that isn't necessarily going out, running the offense, airing it out, up and down the field, the first thing is just how do guys look in helmet and shoulder pads? Because it's one thing to see them at the combine in, spandex and tight clothes and be running around doing these drills. They look athletic and all this different stuff. But once they get the helmet and shoulder pads on, they always look a little bit different. I think that goes twofold for somebody like Dillon Gabriel, who is shorter in stature. And so for him specifically, the Browns brass, Andrew Berry, I think said I can't remember if it was Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski at their end of the draft press conference they had. But they made comments about when they watched Dillon Gabriel on tape. His size didn't come off as something to them that seemed like a hindrance. It didn't seem like it was something that like limited his ability to make plays and do certain things. And so because of that, I have kind of wondered like, okay, because after hearing that, I want to see if that's true. Like, I want to see how he slings it with the helmet and the shoulder pads on. I'm sure he'll be fine because it's against air, and he was doing it in college games, and this isn't really the setting to fully evaluate a guy like that. But like, the biggest concern with him is his stature, and is he going to actually present that on the field is another thing. Obviously for Shedeur, it's the arm strength. What does that look like out there? How does he look in helmet and shoulder pads? Is he starting to work on some of the technical things that hurt his draft stock to a degree, and that people sort of said we're going to hold him back from being a great player in the NFL? That's another thing I'm certainly going to be watching for. And of course, there's going to be just a whole show around Shedeur in of itself. Like, whenever he speaks this weekend, it is going to be everybody and their mother in attendance to see it happen. So, that's not lost on me either. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of reason to be excited about Shedeur Sanders this weekend, and he's going to bring plenty of hype and plenty of attendance from media and people who get to attend these things because people want to see him in person. So that's going to be fun in of its own right. And then, some of the other picks though, like Mason Graham, for example, is he as imposing as he was at the college level? Like in these, and again, it's not you don't get the full picture here when you're not going up against like 11 on 11 or anything, but is he as imposing as he is on tape and as he was at Michigan, like in helmet and shoulder pads, going through these drills? Like, how quick is he? Again, I know that the pick isn't sexy because it's a defensive lineman instead of a two-way player like Travis Hunter, but I'm fascinated to see, man, like how he grows as a player and the presence that he brings and the impact that he brings to this team next year from the interior of the defensive line. And some of that starts here this morning or on Friday with rookie minicamp. So I'm excited to see him. I want to watch Carson Schlesinger and see just his ranginess, how he kind of moves from one side of the field to the other in coverage and does some things, and how quick he's able to sort of operate because, again, it sounds like right now he's going to be filling in for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Unless we get better updates on his status for next season, he could be out for a while or maybe forever. And so for Schlesinger, like I want to see how he'll fill that off-ball linebacker role that's so important in the NFL, but also on this defense. And then for the running back guys like Dylan Sampson and Quinshon Judkins, I'll have my eye closely watching them. Sampson, it's kind of this like yin and yang, right? Quinshon's the more physical guy. Sampson's the more elusive guy. How do they kind of look first time out in the field there? Quinshon, like the physicality and his quickness, because I think people are underrating how fast he is. I know there was part of it is like in the playoff. I know there was that one play where he like broke free and he got chased down. So people don't think he's that fast. I think he maybe can't hold his speed as long, but this guy's got legitimate 4.4 40 time, like 40 speed. Like he's fast. And so I'm excited to see him just operate in general because I've been so excited about Quinshon Judkins this entire process. So I'll certainly have you guys covered there. Plan on seeing me on this platform via a short with updates from after Friday's session. And I'm excited to keep in the loop on that because rookie minicamp is finally here. The offseason program off and running in Berea. And believe it or not, training camp will be here before we know it. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. More to come. Potentially, probably not this weekend because I am traveling on top of covering rookie minicamp. But you can plan on next week, me recapping everything I saw at minicamp on next week's slate of shows. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also working on some guests for next week. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to Locked On Browns, wherever you get your podcast, and at the YouTube channel. For your second listen, which we appreciate being your first, you can head on over and check out Locked On NFL Scouting. You can also keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs, Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I'll talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. Have a good weekend. See you.